Uh, Good afternoon, one and all. Dr. B.S. Dayasagar is a full-time professor of the Systems, Science and Informatics Unit at the Indian Statistical Institute. He received the MSc and PhD degrees from the Faculty of Engineering, Andhra University, Visakhapatnam. He is also the first head of Systems, Science and Informatics Unit, ISI, Bangalore. Earlier, he used to work in the College of Engineering, Andhra University, and Center for Remote Imaging Sensing and Processing, the National University of Singapore, in various positions during the years 92 to 2001. He also received Dr. Balakrishna Memorial Award from Andhra Pradesh Academy of Sciences in the year 1995, Krishnan Gold Medal from Indian Geophysical Union in the year 2002, and George Matheron Award in the year 2011. Uh, from the International Association of Mathematical Geosciences. He is also the founding chairman of Bangalore section of IEEE GRSS chapter. He is an elected fellow of Royal Geographical Society, Indian Geophysical Union, and also he was a member of New York Academy of Sciences during the year 1995 to 96. These are some of the achievements which he had gone through. Also, he has number of publications in many reputed journals as well as conferences. Sir, it's my pleasure to invite you to the lecture. Over to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Vamsi. Thank you, Dr. Professor Usha Rani, madam.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, so I would see, and initially I thought of making this presentation on the board, but I'm not sure, and if it is, in-person talk, lecturing on board should have been a better option. But what I do, and I'll share the PowerPoint slides like everyone else has done. And I could see there are very interesting lectures given by people across India. So my talk would be not on any learning strategies, but it is on a small a mathematical field, which I feel very appropriate for computer vision studies. And I'll try to share a few slides, and then if you want to be very interactive, and you can stop me and then ask me questions, or if you want to ask me questions at the end, that's also fine. But if few people are intuitive, the field of mathematical morphology is a fundamental field that you can really think about the fields where all you can apply. And if you tell your own the domain expertise or domain interest, and I can tell you where exactly mathematical morphology can be applied. So by the name mathematical morphology, it is about studying the shapes. Is there a mathematics to study the shapes? Shapes are not just Euclidean shapes or classical shapes. And whatever we see in day-to-day life, and everything has a kind of shape, texture, orientation, and such kind of features. And how to analyze them mathematically? Is there a specific tool? If someone asks me, and I would always suggest there are two geometric very important methods, and one is mathematical morphology, other one being the fractal geometry, and where they use the scaling concepts to study the shapes and functions. And I would before I show, there is a wonderful book. This is the book which just released I think a few weeks ago. This book is a very popular book written by Jordan Ellenberg. This Jordan Ellenberg was actually a professor who graduated from Harvard University Mathematics Department. So the title of the book is Shape. So his argument is, I read halfway through, and then his argument is geometry for everything. That is what he's telling. And geometry for politics, and geometry for environment, and geometry for anyway, geological science, and for everything he's talking about geometry. Very interesting to read through. And there are some connections with the geometry and the mathematical morphology. As I mentioned, if someone shows you a shape, and if you have some prior knowledge about that shape, you will tell what exactly is that shape. assuming that you don't have a prior knowledge about that shape, and how do you explain that? That is one motivation. The other thing, and if I show a shape to a bunch of people, so independently, if I ask each person, can you explain the shape? And each one would actually explain it in a slightly different way. And so that kind of explanation, I would say it's a qualitative expressions, qualitative description. Can we quantify the kind of description that we are giving in a qualitative sense? So that is where the mathematical morphology comes into picture, right? And I try to share I think you all can see the first slide, and so which may be a bit surprising. And this talk is actually the talk that I have given for IEEE TV on 2nd March. This is the talk I have given for IEEE TV, which is there on, they have their own portal. And I believe it is for, so the viewer has to pay some $11 or something. But the same talk, and with a, I have shown several applications in geoscience, remote sensing, and geospatial data science. But the word mathematical morphology is, you can see it here. I mentioned mathematical morphology and image analysis. This is exactly the title of the book that was published by the founder of mathematical morphology, Professor John Serra, and who happens to be having a PhD in pure mathematics and also PhD in civil engineering. Very interesting, and so his ideas and transformations are, earlier they were popular in mining engineering, but subsequently it has taken a lot of attention from computer science people. And if you see in all IEEE transactions across all the fields, and somewhere you will see about mathematical morphology and its applications in very strange domains. And sometimes they talk about the tower planning, telecom tower planning, and how mathematical morphology is useful. And in medical image processing, it has shown highly promising results. One example I can give where exactly it was used and people realized its importance was characterizing the CT angiographic, 3D CT angiographic pictures, and then based on that, and they'll decide whether a person has to undergo a bypass surgery or not. And mathematical morphology has given wonderful results there. And but as I mentioned, my application domain is more on geosciences, remote sensing, and geospatial data sciences, right? And this is the title of my talk, but with a special applications in remote sensing, geosciences, and geospatial data sciences. So the lecture, as I mentioned, some people who want to use the word spatial data sciences, and I can tell that the main ingredients of any data science is like once you have the data, if you have some efficient methods to acquire the data, and then obviously this particular technical term will come into picture, and then how to extract the information from such kind of data. And then how do you analyze that particular data, that information that is extracted from retrieved from the data. And then how do you reason that particular information that you have analyzed and retrieved. And then subsequently you have information visualization, modeling. And now I don't know whether you are very familiar or not. There is a word called, and which is very popular for the last 10 years, people have been talking, cyber physical systems. And of late, Indian government has launched a mission called a National Mission for Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical Systems. And it is about, to put it in a very simple term, and whatever that you see in physical time and space, can you create a twin, a digital twin of that particular physical system? And I would say cyber physical system is a kind of digital twin. So let me give you an example. And if you have, let us say, a volcano, the behavior of volcano, and you cannot wait to see its behavior, what would happen after 100 years or so. But can you simulate the whole process, how the volcano behaves in a digital space? And earlier we used to simply call modeling and simulation. But now they are telling it is either a digital twin or a kind of cyber physical system. So all these topics have a kind of coherence and intertwined relationships. And so how mathematical morphology can really be employed in all these kind of studies. But I would show the kind of data that I have been using for the last 3 decades is digital elevation models. If someone is familiar with the remotely sensed data, satellite remotely sensed data, the digital elevation models can be derived from those satellite remotely sensed data. And we have all sorts of, the parallax principles and some kind of physics they follow. Or if the data type is not like optical data, people would employ, microwave sensed images. And from there, we have some geometric methods called interferometry, radar geometry methods to generate digital elevation model. What exactly it gives? A digital elevation model gives the terrain surface and how it is highs and lows, and without having terrain features. The features in the sense, the buildings and the trees and industries, roads, railway networks, all that won't be there in digital elevation model. It is a kind of grayscale image, and higher the grayscale value, higher the relief, and lower the grayscale value, lower the relief. In between, you have all sorts of undulations. And such kind of digital elevation models, how to study that kind of digital elevation model and to make some science outcomes out of it. And obviously we are talking about some kind of data sciences. And that because we are talking about the spatial aspect, where each point has a XY coordinates, or you can say that they are spatial coordinates or latitudes, longitudes in geographers' terminology. And I would specifically mention that DEM is a kind of data. Once you have that kind of data, what all that you can retrieve, I would say that is information. How do you analyze that retrieved information? And then how do you reason that? And then modeling, simulation, and visualization and all that would come. At the end, actually, you can see a kind of relationship to the cyber physical systems. And you talk about any small physical system, a dune, how a sand dune behaves. Over a period of time, how the sand gets piled up, and after it reaches to certain level, it start having avalanches, and it starts sliding down. And why? Because it has all sorts of physical principles. But can that dune behavior be simulated on discrete space? And I would like to call that as a digital twin of a sand dune. And that digital twins are now, very important topic. And I was listening to one of my good friends from Italy, and he actually done a lot of work, and he sits as a head of, big data analytics group in European Space Commission. So for all these ingredients of the data sciences, and I could see that mathematical morphology alone can show so many transformations to address the challenges encountered in information retrieval, analysis, reasoning, modeling, simulation, and visualizations, right? And again, and this is what I have been putting every time to understand the dynamical behavior. For instance, as I mentioned, a sand dune, behavior of a phenomenon, that phenomenon is a sand dune, or a process, a good spatio-temporal model is essential. To develop such a model, well-analyzed and well-reasoned information that could be retrieved from spatial and temporal data are important required ingredients. And here, you are actually talking about the predictive analytics. If you are talking about a specific system, a physical system, or a mechanical system, or an engineering system, so its behavior involves, you want to see the moment you talk about behavior, with time, how a particular system is behaving, changing. And can we say an irregular system has become regular over a period of time? And I would say it has a very simple behavior. from irregular to regular and from regular to irregular. But between reaching from irregular to regular, and it may change its phases in different phases. And all that, how to show that in a kind of a form which is called in nonlinear physics as an attractor. Can we create attractors for each system specific attractors? And once we have that and we can quantify its complexity, the complexity, degree of complexity is directly involved, connected to the behavioral pattern. And if it has a very complex high dimension, and we say its behavior is very strange. If it has a low dimension, its behavior is very simple, where the prediction is possible. And those, in electrical engineering, and there is a circuit called Chuva circuit, they say it. So that's where they used all these, dynamical system theories and the concepts. And then to tell that, this is what is my good friend from NASA has quoted when I was to give talks for a group of people in US. And mathematical morphology is an area of geoscience that most people don't realize will literally change the way they look at Earth. It doesn't necessarily be Earth. And see, the data that I'm talking is in respect to the Earth terrestrial surface. But if you talk about some other data, and so in entire mathematical morphology, data is seen as a kind of relief. So that data has highs, lows, valleys, and valleys have smaller valleys, and hills have smaller hills. And like that, they look at the things, and then they study, homogeneity conditions and heterogeneity conditions, how that data would traverse across the different time periods, and then how mathematical morphological principles will come into picture for in information retrieval and all that, right? So in mathematical morphology, data is investigated with respect to another data, which is actually called as the probing rule with certain characteristic information to address tasks such as retrieval, and all this I have mentioned. So you look at here, there is data will be investigated with another data. So this is where the core idea of probing rule comes into picture. Different people will call that probing rule differently. And I would call, being a mathematical morphologist, I'll call that as a structuring element. But core engineer will call that as a kind of filter and a nonlinear filter, and or a simple window or a template. And so data will be investigated with data, and how that data with which we have to investigate can be defined and designed is a big challenge. And in turn, we have certain, the groups within the mathematical morphology. And before going into that and these are the cases that I would like to just project on the screen in the coming probably 1 hour. And this is a typical simulated terrestrial data from where I can extract the rivers and valleys and the ridge hill trends. And I can partition that particular data into a highly meaningful way. There is a transformation called watershed transformation in mathematical morphology. Interestingly, all the names of the transformations, you would realize that they were actually borrowed from earth sciences. We have a term called watershed, we have a term called flooding principle, and we have a term called, the water, drop of water principle. And we have erosions, dilations, openings and closings. All of them are actually nonlinear filters. But many times people used to ask me, erosion, does it have any connection with soil erosion? No, this is all about the erosion of the data and dilation of the data. So once you convert the data into information, I would call that it is a noise-free information where there is no noise. It is just like information and no information, and it is like a binary information, right? So how we have extracted these very unique connectivity networks, and it involves a set of morphological principles, and how we partition this particular data into meaningful watersheds. And I would say they are topological watersheds, not hydrological watersheds, and how morphology has been really employed. And then by taking a very few ingredients, like initiator and generating mechanism, can we really simulate the terrestrial surface? In principle, theoretically speaking, that is possible. And you can see a kind of terrestrial surface as a landscape is created here, which is very close to the reality. And but how exactly it is similar to the actual landscape, that depends on the kind of initiator and generating mechanism that you follow. And so this is like, to quantify the complexity of a kind of space. The space here that I have taken is a Apollonian space. And then subsequently we have some vision problems I would explain. And look at all these patches here with different sizes and shapes. If someone asks you, which is that shape or object located at the strategic location, such that that location can be easily reached out by from every other object with minimal energy expenditure. That is a topic of interest to the people who deal with optimizations. And I would say that optimization is spatial optimization because it is being done on a kind of spatial domain. And similarly, if you take all states of India, there are 28 or 29 states now. And if someone asks you which is that state locationally very significant, perhaps to put up a military bunker or to put up a nice facility, and how do you handle such kind of things? And then even in social sciences, how mathematical morphology can be used. And I want to put that in a context like, if you ask which are those two states have got excellent interactions between each state to the other state. Interaction in terms of what? Perhaps interaction in terms of trade, interaction in terms of the resources sharing. And usually economists follow some kind of gravity models, and how those gravity models can be modified by incorporating the location significance of the state and certain morphological distances. I would explain those things further. And this is another topic, representation of the variables with different strengths. That strength of the variable depends on how large is the variable. Like, one of the variables examples that I always give is crime rate. If the crime rate is very high, and that has to be in a specific state, let us say Goa has to be shown much bigger. And if crime rate is very low in Uttar Pradesh, it has to be shown much smaller. So that is a concept. And eventually you will generate a kind of map which is called as a cartogram. You can see it here. There are 4 states with the unified Andhra Pradesh here. And if I follow different kind of variable strengths and I can change them, this is with according to the variable strength, I have deformed the 4 states. There is mathematics here, there is a computational geometry here, there is image analysis here. And of course, there is map visualizations are here. And most of the maps that we see are if crime rate is very high, and they will put a red color for that particular state. Crime rate is low, and they will put some kind of yellow color or some light shade they'll put. But those kind of representations are rather naive, and you cannot do anything with that other than just visualizing them. But to use them in some kind of spatio-temporal modeling studies and represent your variables in an entirely different form, that is a cartogram form. You can see it here. This is a US population cartogram. Larger the population, larger the size of that. You can see this is the California state. And then where you have, because the population is very high, it is shown much bigger. Assuming that Nevada is a smaller state in terms of aerial extent, assuming that it has a highest population and that Nevada has to be shown much bigger, without losing its local shapes and global shapes and adjacency relationships. Typically, there is no analytical solution, but how they can be done. And so one of the approaches out of the 5 popular approaches is the mathematical morphology based cartogram generation, and which we have given and published somewhere. And then this was a digital elevation model of, Indus, lower Indus River, and which we have partitioned into some 31 subwatersheds and started studying its textural properties. A texture property is one of the very important computer vision problems, and with which we have number of different inferences that we can make. And then if you want to use mathematical morphology to transform probably my face into the John Serra's face, and how do we do that? And we call that as a metamorphism or morphing. And those morphings, most of the times they follow some kind of linear transformations, linear interpolation transformations. But there are ways to actually transform them according to the nonlinear morphological interpolations, and which would be much more powerful than the linear interpolations. These are the actually two founders of mathematical morphology, Georges Mathron and John Serra. And then these are some of the cases. And if I miss the time to finish everything, and these are the different applications that I have shown and published as books and the journal papers and such kind of things. But you can always ask me where else it has been employed heavily. See, broadly speaking, the spatial data, basics of morphology. I will very quickly, roll the slides. And basics of mathematical morphology. And in mathematical morphology, there are 3 or 4 broad fields. Binary mathematical morphology, when your data or information is just in binary form, in black and white form. What kind of transformation that you can use? If your data is in a multi-valued form, like a grayscale images, or the population density varying across the grid cells on the surface of the earth. And then how do you make meaningful manipulations in order to partition that particular information or data into some kind of watershed kind of segmented zones. And that comes under grayscale mathematical morphology. And of late, all these morphological transformations, namely erosion to shrink, dilation to expand, and opening and closings, are to smoothen the data from inside and from the outside. And we can see, and if you just visualize the data is something like a relief or a simple a wavy like signal in a one-dimensional form. And how do you smoothen that? If you have to smoothen that signal from inside, and what kind of transformation you have to use? You have to smoothen that particular signal from the outside, and what kind of transformation you have to use? Why do you want to smoothen it? You want to find you want to eventually compute how rough is the signal. That is in one-dimensional landscape form. Or how rough is the terrestrial surface. Or how rough is the object that you are actually probably an engineering object. If you have to quantify what is its dimension, and we will always talk about dimension 1, dimension 2, dimension 3. These are all, the classical dimensions or Euclidean dimensions. But for the last 30 years, people have been talking about fractional calculus. Okay. And so now the data is being converted into a graph form with nodes and vertices. And on the graph, how do you perform this erosion, dilation, opening, and closings? And it would give you more precise results and with a less time complexity, with lesser computational complexity. And how they have been applied in geosciences, remote sensing, geospatial data sciences. And then how all these above studies could be integrated to better understand the process dynamics. As I was talking about cyber physical systems and the generation of system-specific attractors and their quantification of those attractors and their relationships to predicting the predictability of the system's behavior, all that have some kind of relationships. And I would try to show, but as you know, that I'm giving a talk in just 1.5 hours, but this entire study should go with 26 lectures, and each lecture being about 90 minutes. So that's how I used to give those lectures in IITs and then some foreign universities in Italy. But anyway, that material you can see at the end of my talk, and I have given certain YouTube links which you can easily understand those transformations. Before getting into morphological transformations, as I mentioned, digital elevation model is with rich source of geometric, morphologic, and topologic information. But unraveling that information from digital elevation models if someone has the knowledge about mathematical morphology or fractal geometry or wavelet theories or some kind of discrete mathematics, and the way they can unravel this, I would say GMT quantities, geometric, morphologic, and topological quantities. And it's always an advantage. And I'm sure you learned so many things about learning, artificial intelligence, computer vision, and all that. I always used to tell, if you can really learn one mathematics thoroughly, ins and out, and if you can think through that mathematics, and you will get different original solutions for the challenges that we have been seeing in a day-to-day life. Okay, if this is the data and these are the ingredients, and the basics of morphology, as I mentioned, these are the broad binary mathematical morphology, grayscale morphology, graph mathematical morphology, and adaptive mathematical morphology. You can see these are the people, Matheron and John Serra. And this person was the first one to actually talk about graph mathematical morphology, Luke Vincent, who happens to be a student of John Serra. And he is the one who is heading, Google Documentation Research Center. And he does a lot of work on, the character recognition, optical character recognitions, NLP based things, and all by using mathematical morphology. So very interesting to see a different domain. So these are some of the notations, like we see the black and white objects, we call them as spatial objects or sets, and which would be with notations X, M, B, and all that. And if it is like a, multi-valued data, you have like a, population density over the terrestrial surface, or elevation values at terrestrial surface, or some other features, or our own grayscale image, and where you have darker and brighter regions. Darker regions are shown with zeros, and brighter regions are shown with 250 values. In between, you have all the things in 8 bits per pixel images. And such things are called as spatial functions. And area under the spatial function, it is nothing but summing all the grayscale values under all XY spatial coordinates would give you, some people will call that as area, some people call that as volume, some people will call that as energy. And energy minimization, to minimize the energy, you have morphological erosion, which is shown with this kind of symbol. And to maximize the energy, and you have dilation. And if you perform erosions and dilations in a cascade form, erosion followed by dilation, what it will do? It is like shrinking and expanding. Shrinking and expansion to the same degrees. If you are getting your original object back and you say the involved transformation is a linear transformation, if it loses certain information out of this cascade process of shrinking and expansion, and I would say the energy has been minimized and certain information was lost. So that is where the beauty of morphological transformations being nonlinear operators, it has several advantages to extract very unique kind of, the quantities from the data of various different types. And the dilation is to expand and erosion is to shrink. And this is the symbol for opening, and where erosion followed by dilation is involved. And if you perform dilation followed by erosion, and you have a kind of a closing transformation, and erosions and the openings and closings, as I mentioned, smoothing from inside and smoothing from outside, losing the energy and gaining the energy for different cycles with different probability values we get, and we can actually quantify the complexity, spatial complexity of the data that we really handle in day-to-day life, or the challenges that we face. And then these are some of the simple logical operations. If you have two objects taking the intersection, taking the union, and then if you have two functions, let me say my face and probably my other colleague's face in the audience. And for these two kind of faces, I would say, because they are not just black and white, but they are with different multi-valued data. And then taking the infima and suprema, nothing but point-wise minima and point-wise maxima are nothing but the infima and the suprema of the two functions that I'm talking, Fi and Fj. And these are all some of the basics, and using which you can actually perform a large number of morphological transformations in binary domain, grayscale domain, and for the interpolations and for the graph morphological operations and all that we follow this kind of terminology. Hello. No, I'm busy. I'm giving a lecture and you call me after 1 hour. Okay, bye. Okay, so sorry for the interruption. And so these are the distances between the objects. What are the objects? And if I put two objects and two circular objects of the same radii and computing the distance from the object to object, it is not from the point to point. If it is the point to point and you take one point from this circle and another point, and we have a wonderful distance equation, that is Euclidean distance equation. And but between the objects, how do you compute? And what I do, I'll keep on increasing and dilating this object, this circular object, until this other circular object is occupied. And so how many dilation cycles it took? Some n number of dilation cycles. And then you keep this stationary and then you dilate the other circular object until this particular one is occupied. And how many number of dilation cycles it has taken? Usually if the objects are similar to each other, identical to each other, and you get the distance from A to B and B to A would be the same. But in reality, that doesn't happen. And because we are seeing various different things, similarity measures we keep talking. And what is the distance between my face to my other colleague's face? And if the both faces are just the similar to each other, and obviously the distance between function 1 to function 2 would be the same. And if these two faces are two different people, belonging to two different people, obviously the distance between F1 to F2 is different from F2 to F1. And that would give us many kind of, the options to study the similarity measures, right? And so for that kind of studies, we have these morphological distances, and then where we follow some kind of infima, suprema, and distances between Fi and Fj, and erosion distance between Fi and Fj. And then we have, binary morphological operations. And then I have been telling, and data will be investigated with data. So the other data has certain characteristic information, which I would tell that it is a structuring element. The characteristic information is it has a shape, it has size, it has orientation, it has an origin. By using all that, and it has also a kind of scale, and I can take a smallest primitive size structuring element, probably like a disk, which is just 3 by 3 structuring element. And I can expand that from 3 by 3 to 5 by 5 and 5 by 5 to 7 by 7, 7 by 7 to 9 by 9. And so I can expand it until it occupies the whole universe. I would say, what is our universe? Our monitor, our computer screen. So using such, by tuning those characteristic information of the structuring element, and you can unravel a host of various descriptors from the data, right? All those things are very much important in computer vision studies. If you are talking about finding the biometric studies, we talk about, face recognitions, and morphology has shown wonderful applications there and very promising results. And iris recognitions, and whether morphology can be used, and face recognitions. And so again, the similarity measures, whether you are talking about simple binary image or the grayscale image, right? And then there are representations like X erosion by B, object X is eroded by structuring element B. And what is its mathematical representation? Object X is dilated by B, and object X is smoothened by in terms of morphological opening, where erosion followed by dilation is there, and object X is closed by B. In typical engineering applications, so hole filling, if you have some data where there are holes, and can you fill those holes? And we have usually we use the multi-scale closing operations. And then by increasing the size of B, and you can perform multi-scale erosions and multi-scale dilations and multi-scale opening, multi-scale closings, and then opening followed by closings are leading to alternative sequential filters, and these are all powerful nonlinear filters, and which are very familiar in computer vision studies and image processing and image analysis studies. And this is all about binary, but the moment you come to grayscale, and the operations are slightly different, but the characteristics of B would be more or less the same, and which is, symmetric flat. And you have grayscale erosion, grayscale dilation, opening, closings, and their multi-scale versions. So these are the things. And to give you just a glimpse, and the typical structuring element B I'm talking is this. This is called disk in the 8 connectivity grid, and this is called disk in the 4 connectivity grid, and their multi-scale versions, and then non-flat kind of structuring elements. All these things you have directional structuring elements, and if you know what is that you want to extract from the data, and by tuning and redefining your structuring element, you can actually develop new kind of filters to extract the information that you wanted, right? And these are, I'll skip these things, and just to have some kind of visual appeal, this is original data. When you shrink it, it becomes like this. When you dilate it, it becomes like that. And when you smoothen it, and it smoothen the objects, when you close it and you see this particular hole, because this is represented with ones and zeros like binary data, that particular hole was actually filled here, right? And so these are some of just the demonstrations about morphological erosions, morphological dilations, and morphological openings and closings, and their extensions to grayscale versions. And then so you have their graphical representations, and you can put the data in a graph form with nodes and edges, and you can perform graph erosion, graph dilation, graph opening, graph closings, and it has its own advantages. And then using those fundamental morphological operations, and we have skeletonization, a transformation which is very popular in computer science, is called medial axis transformation, MAT. So typically, what is the example? You have a black road, probably national highway, and a divider. A divider dividing that particular road with certain width, we actually call that is a median. That median, the divider is the median. And why to extract such kind of medial lines for a given object? And you can convert the given object into its skeleton. Obviously, skeleton occupies lesser space. Then you can transmit that data in terms of skeletal form. And then by encryption, and you can reconstruct the object which I tried to send you, but I could not send because of the size, and you have converted into its skeleton, and then you have transmitted that because it occupies lesser space. Just imagine my body is there, and if I keep on shrinking until last but one level, where else it goes? And it gets stopped at the last but one level is my skeletal structure. And from that skeletal structure, and one can actually reconstruct the whole body precisely with 100% accuracy. So that skeletal structure depends on the body structure and the type of B that you are using all through the structuring element. So that is where B can be treated or seen as a kind of key. If you are talking about cryptographic studies, and you can see that structuring element B as a visual cryptographic key, but there is not much work was done applying mathematical morphology in visual cryptography. You have distances, all that I have mentioned, dilation distances, erosion distances, the medians. I have shown one of the pictures, and so we see many advertisements at tiger becoming a motorbike or motorbike becoming a tiger. And so where the tiger is a function 1, F1, and motorbike is a function 2, F2. And between F1 and F2, you can create all possible hierarchically generated interpolations or the median functions, and you put them in a sequence, and then you can see motorbike becoming a tiger. And those things are very interesting when you talk about the morphological medians. And these morphological medians are, how do we compute? We take the intersection of, let us say, tiger and a motorbike, and then you take the union of tiger and motorbike, which I'm showing as xi and xj here, and the intersections will be keep on dilated with b of size n ranging between 0 to capital N. And so the unions of those two objects, you keep on eroding it, and then outputs would be taken, and then you take the intersection of those two outputs, and you do that process for n ranging between 0 to capital N, you get one median function between xi and xj, right? And then between this median and the source and the median and the target, you create two other medians. This is a hierarchical process. And those interpolations are very interesting, and one should really look at those things. And then subsequently, given an object, there is a set X, and we are investigating that set X with B. If someone asks you, how do you explain the set X? And if you know that the classical shapes, how they look, it is very close to circle, it is not very close to circle, it is very irregular, like that kind of description we will give. No, we need the description to be given in terms of the probing rule structuring element B. And then obviously, if X and B are homothetic in the sense, X is a circle, B is also a circle of a smaller size. And then we say that these two are homothetic to each other. But if you are investigating a circle with a square like B, and you get a different result. That is where if someone asks you, how regular is the object shown on a screen, let us say, and then you have to ask regularity, irregularity in terms of what? That in terms of what is specifically the structuring element B here. And why we say circle as a circle, and our eyes and brain, and it tries to integrate the features in terms of a kind of circular, and then with respect to that, and we try to give, assuming that we have no idea about classical Euclidean geometry, and obviously our kind of description is entirely different. What do you want? Why there's so much papers, right? Okay. Asif sent. Right, and so to quantify that complexity of the set X with respect to B, we have an uncertainty index. That uncertainty index, how to compute? Typically by following morphological openings. When you open erosion followed by dilation, the object loses certain information. If you perform 2 consecutive erosions followed by 2 consecutive dilations, it still loses some other information. If you perform 3 consecutive erosions followed by 3 consecutive dilations, and it still loses information, that loss of information is not uniform. So why it is not uniform? The kind of data that we are investigating is not always homogeneous or homothetic with respect to B, right? So with that, and we have the pattern spectra analysis. So that is what is shown here on the numerator. And the total energy, how that energy is getting diminished with opening cycles, increasing opening cycles, cycle 0, cycle 1, cycle 2, it keeps it losing its energy. And that energy loss is actually shown on the numerator. And the total energy is A of X. And then finally, you keep computing the probability values by following this kind of ratio. And those probability values across all n values, Pn log Pn, for n ranging between 0 to capital N, if you take the sum of all those values and you take the negative value, you typically get the morphological entropy or uncertainty index. With reference to that, you can tell how complex is the data that you have investigated with respect to B. So sometimes, the complexity of very irregular object with respect to irregular B, there is no complexity there. A complexity of a circular object with respect to irregular B, and there is a complexity. A complexity of a circular object with a circular B, there is no complexity. It is very simple. And this is how you analyze the given information or the data on, you say, repository on the screen, and then you have so many features on the screen. all circles are there. Suddenly, if you start seeing a kind of a triangle block, and everybody would start looking at it. So you have circular blocks on the screen, and at one place you have a triangular block, and everybody tries to gets tempted to look at the triangular object because that is very unique compared to other objects. And then our mind and eyes would try to look at something very unique. That is what many say, that saliency detection. If you are given a scenery, and so if you are shown that scenery for only 5 seconds, and if you are asked, what is that very striking feature that you have seen just now about 5 seconds ago? And you try to just close your eyes and then you tell that, oh, that was there is a rose flower located at the central location, and that is what is the strikingly eye-catching for me. And the same scenery was shown to some 100 people. And so whatever is highly contrasting with a very peculiar texture and a peculiar location, and the high contrast with strong edges. And I could see that in the morning my colleague was talking about principal component analysis and all that. But instead of principal component analysis, I would use this kind of granulometric index, and it would give you the stronger edge features. Those stronger edge features would actually tell us and which is that striking features, but people are getting attracted to. And such kind of studies are there if you are really intuitive, as I mentioned at the beginning, and you can show that kind of applications by using a mathematical morphology. And then their grayscale versions, what all that you have seen are in the binary versions and grayscale versions, and grayscale skeletonization, uncertainty index, and morphological medians between the functions and their dual operations. In entire morphology, you have every operator has a dual operator. Erosion has dilation, and dilation is erosion, dual operation, and opening is dual to closing, and closing is dual to opening. And then again you have dilation distances and erosion distance are dual to each other. And then Hausdorff versions are there. And you can see this particular thing, and I will share with probably Usharani madam, and you can look at in which are all the fields that mathematical morphology has been employed so far. And so I just spoke about only morphology, binary morphology, and grayscale morphology very briefly. I know that it is not that easy to understand with if I explain on the board, which certainly, as I mentioned, it would take about 26 lectures. But those lectures are available in NPTEL form, lecture form, and that you can always access and listen. And then using these transformations, Ridge Valley network extraction, scale invariant but shape dependent measures, roughness characterization, how to handle them, which are very important in geosciences, not only in geosciences. And you name the field, I'll tell you why we should really go for Ridge and Valley. Then further in remote sensing, how to handle, and then geospatial data sciences. Mostly I will show, because there is another half an hour time and what was given to me, and I'll show some kind of snapshots, and you can have a kind of glimpse of the applications of mathematical morphology. So if you want to look at where all we have published those works over a period of some 25 years, we have been doing the same work. We didn't leave it, but we try to show some new directions of mathematical morphology applications. Look at this. I was talking about a synthetic landscape which we have generated by following morphological skeletonization and the reconstruction of skeletons, and then certain kind of coding techniques. We have generated a kind of fractal digital elevation models. Higher the value, higher the elevation, and lower the value, lower the elevation. And typically, if you convert that into kind of binary form by following a thresholding strategy, and you get a black and white object like this. And a typical valley connectivity network, which is nothing but the flow paths of the streamlines, like our rivers, our valley connectivity network, you get by performing the skeletonization transformation, which involves multi-scale erosions and arbitrary cycle opening and certain kind of, logical differences, we can compute its corresponding skeletal network, which is a valley connectivity network in the context of landscape studies. What is it involved? It has involved erosions, multi-scale erosions with respect to the size of B, which is ranging between n is equal to 0 to capital N. And then once you get the output, different erosions, and then you are subtracting it. This is the reverse solidus is the set subtraction. And then such kind of thing, and you perform one smoothing from inside with respect to B, and you get all, this is like this. If you look at, you have a hill, valley, hill, valley. And when you perform skeletonization, you get all these valley connectivity networks. So which involves multi-scale erosions and an opening transformation and a simple logical difference. You do that for all n values ranging between 0 to capital N, and you get the typical connectivity network like this. And it has a number of applications when you talk about, you say geospatial data science or terrestrial structure, and you can extract automatically the river networks. And there its corresponding dual thing is ridge connectivity networks. When these are valleys, obviously these are ridge trends. Each valley segment is embedded between the two ridges, and that is how the whole terrestrial surface looks like, right? So for that, and so you can see that for this particular one, green lines are valley connectivity networks, blue lines are ridge connectivity networks. Meaningfully partitioning them into watersheds would yield this kind of what we have followed. We followed, if we perform recursive flooding. Recursive flooding is nothing but recursive multi-scale dilations, and coming from the multiple water bodies, let us say regional minima. And if you keep on dilating those water bodies or flooding, and where those flood water front lines would extinguish each other, you construct a dam there. And then by constructing those dams, you are actually partitioning 3 water body regions into 3 catchment basins. And such kind of basins are many here. And we followed the multiple regional minima we have taken, and treating those multiple regional minima as local lakes or water bodies. And then we allowed them to flood until they extinguish each other by constructing the dam, and we have the watershed transformation here. Subsequently, these are having some kind of geophysical applications, and I know that in the audience, not many geoscience interest people are there. I don't spend much time here, but before showing that, you look at this. In mathematics, there is a space called Apollonian space, and its corresponding dimension. If I ask you people what is its dimension, everybody will be tempted to say its dimension is 2. But its dimension is a kind of fractional dimension. It is that its dimension is more than 1 and less than 2. I would say if it is 2 dimensions, the whole of this square block should be occupied with a white shade. Then I'll call that as dimensional 2. But there is a void here, and so only this space is occupied. And I would call this as it has a dimension more than 1 and less than 2. And then what would be that? I'm telling more than 1 and less than 2, and certainly it is not integer dimension. For that, what we do is you pack that particular space with octagons. What we do, you keep on shrinking, or you keep on performing openings, cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3, and at cycle n, capital N, it is completely vanished, because the erosions followed by dilations, when the erosions dominate the object size, and it would be completely vanished. It's nothing but peeling of the onion. You keep on peeling of the onion layers. At one level, you will see a small seed. If you erode that further, and it would be vanished. So by going up to the last level seed and you start dilating it, it doesn't come back to its original stage. If I use the structuring element which is not homothetic to this, and in turn, if I use a structuring element of shape in octagonal shape, a smallest possible shape, and then if I perform erosions followed by dilations in a cascade form or multi-scale opening, And at the first level, I can remove this block. I will get that. And then on the remainder of you, after subtracting this from this, on the remainder, if you perform those multi-scale openings, and then you can actually pack the Apollonian space with regular gons. You know, packing of sphere is an important problem both in engineering and physics, subject physics, and similar ideas, and why you have to pack the spheres with spheres, and why we should not pack a sphere with a cuboids like things, octahedrons and hexahedrons. And by doing that, and how the size and number and shape relationships, if you can establish, and you can find out a dimension which is actually 1.36, the dimension of Apollonian space is 1.36. It is not 1 and it is not 2. It is a non-integer dimension. So those ideas, how we can actually incorporate, and there is a technique called morphological shape decomposition to pack the region, and then you can compute the dimension. Look at here, this is a typical watershed basin, and from where the valley connectivity network is removed, it is something like, from my body, if I precisely take out the skeleton, and what is left, a fat fractal is left over. And that region you pack with non-overlapping discs of your own choice, and then you can derive a kind of dimension, and that dimension will tell you how complex is my fat fractal region, excluding the skeleton. Similar studies have a lot of applications in geophysics, and so that's what we have done here. Right, and then I was also talking about uncertainty index. So what you do is perform opening with the higher cycles of opening, and then nth cycle opening and n+1 cycle opening. Obviously, this is smaller than the previous version, and the energy that it is lost here is slightly higher than the energy that it is lost at the higher cycle of opening. For all n values, if you do this process, you can compute a pattern spectrum value. And if you divide that with the total energy of the original function, and you can compute a kind of probability distribution of that pattern spectrum value. And then subsequently, you can compute the uncertainty index here. Many of the people are familiar with fast Fourier transformation, which would be very good to quantify the spectral content in a given image. But whereas here, it does not quantify the spectral content, but it quantifies the shape size involved in the shape size content of the given function or the functional data. So for that, if you can see, this is another terrestrial surface region in terms of digital elevation model. By performing openings, what it is happening here, and you are losing energy, and it is becoming darkened and darkened. Its converse is, if you perform multi-scale closings and it is gaining energy, it is becoming brighter and brighter. So that is done with cycle 1, cycle 40, cycle 80, cycle 120, and so these are the snapshot panels. And when that is done with a rhombus-like structuring element, which is shown here, and you have a pattern like this, and if it is done with a square-like structuring element, and you have a different pattern, and from that, whatever the result that you get, the uncertainty index for this one, with respect to rhombus, with respect to square, with respect to octagon, and you get different values, and in turn, you say the uncertainty index of the function f is the structuring element dependent. The moment you change the structuring element, and you get a different uncertainty index. So which is a powerful tool for any person who is working in a computer vision studies. And this is typically quantifying the texture of the given object. The texture is another important property when you are talking about the saliency detection. You have all glossy objects on the screen, except one object with a different texture, and people would start looking at that particular one. So I was reading this book, as I mentioned at the beginning, this shape, a very recent book. Here it is very interesting thing that somebody has made, that author has mentioned. If you keep on showing a circular block to a young child, very young, probably in few months. And they look at the object after object after object. Suddenly, if you make the object on the right side upside down, and then if the person infant is staring at that particular object which is upside down, and he mentions that such people have some kind of geometric visualization, and they become great mathematicians. That is what he has argued. And I fully agree that the person who has written that book is a great mathematician. And but these are the things in there is a center called Spatial Learning Intelligence Center. Spatial Intelligence Learning Center, SILC. If you get a chance, you see that center. So they actually talk about the pediatric psychology. So the very young children and how actually they react to by seeing the objects and by seeing different features with by age growing, and how they actually cultivate analyzing the features and all that is being handled by one Nora Newcomb. But she was actually a pediatrician, but she works in this particular area called Spatial Intelligence Learning Center, SILC. Okay, so coming back, so this is again the terrestrial surface and how we have actually classified them in terms of the granulometric index value that we get. And it is not just a structuring element, one single structuring element. We use multivariate structuring elements with respect to them and how those the watersheds are in texture form and how they are behaving, and we have classified them. I'll just skip much of these details and how lower Indus Basin looks in a 3D form. This is nothing but a kind of data, digital elevation models derived from satellite data. And I'll skip, and these are all the steps involved in the uncertainty index. And the classification of images. Now, many people are talking about hyperspectral image classification. By word term itself, it's a hyperspectral. The resolution is a very high resolution, spectral resolution. And earlier we used to see one monochrome band, one single band. Subsequently, we started seeing 3 bands, RGB. Subsequently, started seeing 10 bands. So now we are seeing hundreds of bands for the same region, which means the wavelength width is smaller and smaller and smaller. It is becoming finer and finer. In turn, earlier when we used to see only 3 bands, between the successive bands, we have hundreds of bands, channels. And now it is posing the new challenges to the scientists, how to reduce the dimensionality. And when you have 100 channel images for the same region, and you don't want to work on all 100 images, and in turn you want to see, can I remove certain images? And so that is where you can find out which are those 2 channeled images are close to each other. Remove that. It's a kind of redundancy. And how to reduce the dimensionality. You have morphological distances can be applied, but some group of people from Europe, and they call it as morphological profiles, extended morphological profiles, and attributed morphological profiles. They use those concepts, and then they have come out with very powerful results. I can say that that group has shown for the first time the power of mathematical morphology in remote sensing studies. I don't go much into those details, and some of the references I have given. And other things, ranks for pairs of images, let us say digital elevation model classification. And to put it in perspective, let us say there are thousands of images in a database. Each image is showing a person, human beings, face. And if you have to group those thousands of images according to some kind of similarity, if 2 images are exactly the same, probably it is of the same person. It is a redundant. So how to pair the images? Which are those 2 images are the best pair, and which are those 2 images in the database are the worst pair? We have given a simple idea that computing the infima, its corresponding area, we are talking about phase 1 and phase 2, phase 1 and phase 3, phase 1 and phase 4. Between phase 1 to phase I and phase J, and you compute the infima and you compute the suprema, you take the ratio, and then we also compute the distances between Fi to Fj, erosion distance and dilation distances, and then minimum of erosion and dilation distances is in the numerator, and maximum of those two distances in the denominator, and take the ratios and take the product, and then you have a kind of rank it gives. And if you have 100 images in the database, obviously 100 by 100 infima matrix and suprema matrix and erosion distance matrix and dilation distance matrix you will compute, and from them those matrices, and you can come out with some numerical value which would range between 0 to 1. If the value is 1 and these Fi and Fj are similar to each other, if the value is close to 0 and is far apart and the worst pair, and such kind of pairing, how do we do? And we have actually given these equations to explain, and this is the original image. Make it into 4 quadrants, quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. Interaction matrix would give you, obviously the quadrant to quadrant itself, the similarity is exactly the same. All diagonal values are F1 to F1 and F1 to F2 to F2, F3 to F3 and F4 to F4. And but other values, the higher the value, the better is the pair. And what is that highest value other than non-diagonal values here? It is 0.493, which is quadrant 1 and quadrant 3 are close to each other. This is how we do the pairing, and which was very interesting, was published eventually in image processing transactions. That is another application. And again, band selection. And when you have hundreds of channels in the hyperspectral image cube, and how do you select those bands? And we follow simple dilation distances. As I mentioned in binary objects, object A and object B, you keep on dilating until object B is contained in the dilated version. And how many dilation cycles are required? And let us say 10 dilation cycles. And you keep on dilating B until the object A is occupied. And if it takes, dilation cycle 7 or 8, and you say that there is a similarity, and then that's why the distance between A to B is different from B to A, right? And that kind of studies we have done, and then so we call that as a band selection via dilation distances. And these are from the remote sensing. And in the geospatial data sciences, I believe I don't have only another 10 minutes or 12 minutes time, and I would quickly show. Look at this for the visualizations. This is a simple fractal object that I have generated, and a typical the skeletal network from the fractal object is this. We have actually coded them into some kind of order designation, and then from them you can precisely reconstruct the original object. From the skeleton you can reconstruct the original object. And but while we were reconstructing from the skeletal subsets, and we started coding them with some kind of color codes. And then when we take the superposition of all those reconstructed versions, and we got this kind of the two-dimensional fractal landscape. And when you show that in a vectorial exaggeration form, they look like, the landscapes like this, realistic landscapes. Watershed transformations, these are the water bodies, typically traced from the satellite data belonging to the Vijayanagar district. And then if you allow them to flood with uniform speed, where exactly they meet each other. So these are the watershed regions. And it is like a custard apple. You have seeds. Seeds are like water bodies here. And so around the seed, and you have a pulp. And what is the influence of the pulp of each seed? And typically that is the catchment basins here. That is the principle involved here. What is that we have followed? Skeletonization by influence technique. And that idea to convert the point specific data into polygonal form. And so this is the rain gauge stations where we have the temperature data in 34 rain gauge stations. This is typically the point specific data, but I want the data in a contiguous form. And you keep on dilating them with the, the temperature as the variable, and what is its strength. If the temperature is high, and it has to be dilated faster. If temperature is low, it has to be dilated slow. And then when you perform the weighted skeletonization by influence zones by creating weights at the point specific rain gauge stations, and then you can generate a contiguous map. And this is nothing but point data conversion into polygonal form or a zonal form. So to show that particular simulation, so you can see this, a simple animation here. So from different watersheds, and it is coming with a different speed. And then you have a kind of similarly, you have I have also mentioned about cartogram generation and population cartogram. This is actually area projection map of the United States. And the cartograms given by various other groups were looking like this, very powerful computation geometry algorithms. And one of the most powerful algorithms that I have seen earlier was the one created by one Russian mathematician, which is called Gusein, Jade, and Tikhonov's approach. And this is what we have generated by following the mathematical morphological operations, which is protecting the global shape and the adjacency relationships, local shapes to certain extent. But I could see of late one Mike Gassner from Singapore University has given density equalization maps, which is much powerful than any of these methods. This is just an idea. And the interpolations, and to give an idea about interpolation, and on the left side, these maps are in 1896, India was affected with a bubonic plague from western part of India. So over a period of 11 years, and the whole Indian subcontinent was affected with that bubonic plague. The data that we had is only in a snapshot form and across annual intervals. But to show that in a real-time mode, and what I have done, and I have followed the morphological interpolations, and object A and object B, take the intersections of these two, and take the unions of these two. Intersection should be dilated, and then union should be eroded, and then you take the intersection of those two outputs for different n values, and would give you one median element in between object A and object B. In between successive maps, and I have created in a hierarchical manner a large number of interpolated median maps, and those maps, by putting them in a sequence, you can see it here, how the bubonic plague started here, and over a period of time, somebody migrated to the eastern part of India, and then it was grown. And so how we have simulated this? By taking the source data, which is in a annual interval data available, and we have created 164 hierarchically interpolated plague maps, and then we have put them in a sequence, and then finally we have, so over a period of 11 years, how it has traversed the plague and epidemic. And it has, for the current situation, it has a lot of, relevance. I think one can really look at how the COVID is spreading. COVID is spreading, and if you know some hotspots and how it has been spread, and it has a lot of applications. The ideas involved there, what I have shown was a binary interpolations, and the grayscale interpolations are on the functions, multi-valued things, and the principles are the same. And the function 1 and function 2, in between those two functions, a median function interpolation is this. And between this and this, you have another interpolation. Between this and this, another interpolation. This has been done in a hierarchical way until there is no further scope for you to insert one more interpolation, right? And the next level is just some kind of animations, and this is the source and target, and with different shapes of the structuring elements and how it is getting metamorphosed. So this is becoming this, and in a slow fashion. And similarly with a different structuring element, if you change the structuring element, the morphing sequence would be different. If you change the structuring element, the morphing sequence would be different, like flat structuring elements, non-flat structuring elements, and all that have a number of options to for you to really think in your own domain. So, and then so to just show you, using morphological distances, when these are all the water bodies, and assuming that government has during a high drought season and all these irrigation tanks are getting dried up, and then government has money to protect only one single water body. So which is that water body has to be protected? If you, the people living here, they'll say you protect this water body. People living here, they'll say that you protect this water body. But there should be some kind of optimization way of policy. And then if you perform dilation distances between every water body to every water body, there are 66 water bodies, and you will get a 66 by 66 matrix. And from that dilation distance matrix of 66 by 66, and the column wise minima, maxima for all 66 columns, and then all these maxima, minima of these maxima coming from which water body, that is the spatially significant location of the water body, which has to be protected such that people around all these water bodies which were dried up, they can easily reach to this particular water body with minimal energy expenditure. So that is, as I said, and it has mathematical morphology has the strength to even talk about some spatial social policies. And then this clustering thing, and so the directional relationships in mathematics, typically they say in mathematicians' language, you don't study objects, but you study the relationship between the objects. And one of the important relationships, the distance relationship. There is object A and object B. How far A is from B and B is from A. And we always say A from B, distance between A to B and B to A is same. We are talking about the points. No, when you talk about the objects, structures are different. Like Andhra Pradesh state as an object and the Karnataka state as an object, and the distance between Karnataka to Andhra Pradesh object is different from Andhra Pradesh object to the Karnataka object. So in that process, we have given, distance-based spatial relationship. What is in what direction object, if you say that this is object A, B, C, A to B, what is the relationship? And A to C, what is the relationship? And C to A, what is the relationship? To do that, and we have given a kind of, dilation distance-based relationships. And from there, and you can tell from A to B, it is easily reachable compared to A to C. And then how we have done with the different structuring elements with different origins with the dilation cycles as the process. And then other one I have been talking about was the interactions, spatial interactions between the objects or between the countries. And let us say that Malaysia and Singapore are there and they have excellent trade relationships. And it is not, they say it is win-win situation. The amount of profit that Malaysia is getting is not exactly the same amount of the profit that Singapore is getting. But as per the Newton's gravity model, if you talk about the force of attraction between the celestial bodies, it is a symmetric equation. But in social gravity model, it is not symmetric. And the amount of the profit that Malaysia is getting is different from the profit that Singapore is getting. So that is where the location is important. And the distance is relationship is important. By using those locations and distances, we have proposed this modified gravity model here, and with which it is not symmetric. Not symmetric. I am only talking about trade, but if you are intuitive, you can talk about many other variables, and I would say land costs. So rich gets closer to another rich. Rich won't get closer to the poor. And so in the same way, two rich states side by side, and they have an excellent interaction, a force of interactions. Whereas two farther states, the distance matters a lot. Two farther states, let us say Goa and Nagaland, and the interaction is very feeble. And with those ideas, and if you have to cluster the regions, and you look at here, and so we have given, categorization. The best two states are probably Orissa and Chhattisgarh are highly interacting states, and then followed by Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, and then Uttar Pradesh and some other state. And this is how we have given some categorization, which is always debatable. And so we spoke about the land value as the variable here. You can see this particular animation here. An animation here. The first the blue-red objects are highly interacting states. And as you are going to the end of the animation, and those states are farther from each other and having a very feeble interactions. So this is where the question comes, and why people would travel to the city center. The flow of attraction and the force of attraction for the people to travel to the city center because of various reasons. If you put one great shopping mall at the exterior portion of the city, and the people won't really go there, and so the shopping mall is at the city center, and people would tend to go there, and people won't really go to a corner of the city. And that is where interior states have a lot of advantage in terms of business and compared to the exterior states, right? And so you can see as it is going to the end of the animation, and those states are very farther from far from very each other, right? And I'll stop here. And with this, and I would say the digital elevation model is one of the engineering marvel that many people have not realized, an important source of data for geoscientists. Actually, billions of dollars were spent by global community to develop the digital elevation models, but it is not really realized by scientists that it has a lot of geometric, morphologic and topologic information, and through which we can actually predict many disasters. And mathematical morphology, a robust mathematical theory that needs more attention by geoscience and remote sensing community, not necessarily just these two fields. And there are medical imaging community, medical image processing community, and all those people are there. These are some of the books that I always show over a period of almost some 15 years, and we started publishing and editing books. The next slide is actually about some of the lectures I have given, which were recorded in NPTEL style in IIT Kharagpur. And if you want to really learn mathematical morphology, which I have just given some descriptive way of lecture, and you can understand, how a typical teacher, I know that you are all great teachers, and the teaching undergraduates is a big challenge. So, how difficult is teaching undergraduates, and I had to address some undergraduate students in IIT Kharagpur, which were recorded through NPTEL style. Those YouTubes are here, and then this is some call for papers. And to come back, and so we have to talk about how to create digital twins. And for any physical system that you are talking, whether it is mechanical engineering or physical system, and can we create for every system there is a digital twin which would the behavior of which can be seen on the screen. Oh, after this time period, this is how this behaves. You require so many controls, and it is not one single man's job, and it is a big challenge. It's a job of a group of people. And this attractor theory, and then strange attractors, simple attractors, and predicting predictability, how efficient is our predicting predictability, all that is involved from the data that you get and the algorithm that you use and your learning process that you adopt. And then finally the attractor constructions, and then quantifying the attractors and how complex is the attractor, whether it is high dimension or low dimension, and then you can talk about the predicting predictability. So all that I will skip these things. Some examples of attractors. So this I will show, can we construct system specific attractors with all these ingredients? Addressing such a challenge may provide rich clues and insights in our strides and struggle to make precise predictions. At the end, this is not a job of one person. A great teamwork with excellent coordination is required. Of late, our institute has got a project of 100 crores under National Mission for Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical Systems. They have recognized our institute as an institute which can talk about data sciences, and we work to give methods, approaches, and handle various cyber physical systems to, of course, to impress upon the governmental policies. So I am really grateful to IEEE Geoscience. I didn't tell you people, I was a distinguished lecturer appointed last year. And so wherever I give a lecture, and I will always acknowledge that. And it's a great thing that Vignan University for hosting me. So I gave a in-person talk a couple of years ago, and it's another opportunity for me to address the gathering and hosts of Dr. Usharani madam, and she called a few days ago, and then she said whether I'm available to give a talk, and it's always a privilege and honor. And not for the sake of giving lecture, but for the sake of popularizing the mathematical morphology field, which is more European, but slowly there are small groups working in this area. I always love to promote mathematical morphology. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We know that it is purely based on set theory with very limited operation, but power is very high.
Yeah.
Just intersection, union, and dilation, erosion. Very
Yes,
few concepts, but the capability or power of handling problems is very high.
Thank you.
So you are working such a good area, and you enabled with good examples all the participants who are in the meeting. We are all enjoyed our lecture, sir. Now I request Anil, could you please award a small digital award to sir as a token of request, as a token of gratitude, sir. You accepted, you are with us during this evening. We are all very, very happy, sir. So we want to convey our thanks as well as the digital award as a token of request, a token of gratitude, sir. Thank you, sir. Anil?
Yeah.
Thank you, madam. It looks very
Thank you
nice.
so much.
It looks very nice, and you have taken this photo from web. Very nice.
No, sir, I will send to your mail.
Thank you, madam. Last time, what the memento that you have given, that bullock cart handicraft.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful one, and my wife likes it so much. And wherever we go, we have to take this, she tells.
Oh, good.
Thank you,
Good to hear. I will send, sir. I will send to your mail.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. And then they can always contact me whenever they want to have any kind of discussions or conversation.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
But power of morphology is very, very high, sir, in solving problems.
It's a small theory. A small theory, but it has wide-ranging application.
Yeah. But we should have little bit intelligence, sir, how to utilize.
Yes. So that would come actually with some kind of interactive sessions.
Okay.
So because people with different backgrounds, I felt that even computation social science, it has number of applications. And even in the map visualizations, it has applications. But there is no much money in that particular industry. But if you talk about medical image processing, they have a lot of money, and they have been using morphology heavily.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Namaste.
Okay, sir. Bye, sir. Anil? Next session, రేపటి session explain చేయి మళ్ళీ.
Yeah. For the participants. 7:30 by Dr. Kondal, Assistant Professor, University of Petroleum Engineering Studies, Dehradun. Second session is from 1 to 1:30 p.m. Learning for Computer Vision by Dr. Samia, University of Wolverhampton, UK. The third session is also learning for learning. And I'm going to share the schedule in WhatsApp group also. So this is all about the today's all three sessions. I hope you already filled the feedback form. I'm going to share the attendance of this first days. And if you have any kind of queries regarding that, form, if you fill your queries, you have any issues regarding anything, we'll inform you. Am I audible to you?
Right now it's okay. Earlier it's not good. Now it's okay.
Okay.
Anyway, please share the tomorrow sessions in mail also, in WhatsApp also.
Okay, madam.
The voice was cut during that time. It was not properly communicated.
Yeah, sure. I will share into the WhatsApp group.
So we came to the end of the day 3. I hope all of you enjoyed all the 3 sessions, autoencoders as well as the mathematical morphology, and you enjoyed all the 3 sessions of the today. Tomorrow we are going to have a good 3 more sessions. Thank you one and all for being with us and going through the lectures very nicely. Tomorrow we are entering into day 4. Day after tomorrow you must take the exam. So please go through all the content. Content is uploading to the YouTube. Thank you one and all. If you are having any queries, be present. Otherwise we will close the meeting within 2-3 minutes. So anybody is having any representations, you can submit your representation.
Madam, one question, madam.
Sir, please go ahead, sir.
Madam, yesterday afternoon, session 3, sequence learning, LSTM RNN session was missed.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
that is not there.
Actually, we are having that. Himanshu sir is the resource person. His sister met the accident at 1:30 p.m. That's why he went for the hospital, sir. He is not available over the phone also. Last night at 8 p.m. we could able to trace him. So far he has not given consent for us, sir. If he can take within these 3 days, somewhere we can accommodate.
Okay. Sorry, madam.
Madam, please unmute.
Thank you.
హలో
ప్లీజ్ నవ్వు ఓకే మేడం.
నేను మాట్లాడింది వినిపించలేదు అయితే.
వినిపించింది మేడం. ఇట్స్ ఆడిబుల్. లాస్ట్
ఓకే.
Sorry.
Yeah, still if anybody have any queries, sir?
Ma'am, all the lectures you have uploaded in WhatsApp group, no ma'am? What all till
No, my YouTube.
Yeah, ma'am, that is sent to through WhatsApp, no ma'am? The in YouTube that
Yeah,
link
we
has
have.
sent.
Yes, madam. Already we have been sent those links into the WhatsApp group, madam.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Just go through it, madam. Already all those links which are available in WhatsApp.
So now we are going to close the meeting. Have a nice day. Good luck, all of you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.